Some of the biggest stories in Brevard right now are business stories. We're seeing important changes in the jobs and housing pictures, just as healthcare reform is about to kick in. The Economic Development Commission is in the spotlight, given questions about two companies that sought tax breaks for promised jobs. One of them is caught up in a scandal involving alleged bribery and bid rigging with a former clerk of courts. And there's a move afoot at the Melbourne Greyhound Park to bring a Florida icon to an end. We'll talk all of those issues and more today with my guest, Florida Today business editor Wayne Price. Take a look. Wayne, give me an overview of how the economy is doing, some of the key indicators that we look at, our jobless rate, things like that. What's up?
Yeah, Matt, so far it's been a pretty good summer for Brevard County. We got the July jobless rate, which is the latest, and we had unemployment at 7.8%, which was down slightly from 7.9% in June. Now, what's good about that is that at the same time the unemployment rate fell, the number of people in the workforce rose, and the number of jobs increased. And that's always a good sign. That's the trend you like to see. The number of available workers is going up, the number of jobs is going up, and the unemployment rate goes down.
So the jobs being created is actually outpacing a little bit.
Right. There were 1,300 new jobs, and that's over the month. And then as far as the number of people into the workforce, that number grew 1,350 so people. And if you look at the national level, and the national rates came out Friday, and the unemployment rate dropped slightly, I think to 7.3%, right around there. But that drop in unemployment was based on a number of people pulling out of the workforce. They're not even trying to look for work anymore. And that's not the way you want to see the unemployment rate go down.
But in Brevard, it's a slightly different picture.
It's more than slightly, it's a big different picture. It means the number of people into the workforce grew, and the number of jobs grew, and the unemployment rate goes down. That's the way you want to see it.
Do you have a sense of what's going up or down in terms of sectors? Or
surprisingly, you know, it's not surprising that the sector that's related to tourism, the service industry, that went up. That's your waiters, your food servers, and that's very big in Brevard County. So that went up is not that surprising. What is surprising is that manufacturing jobs went up and construction jobs went up, and that's been one of the weakest sectors for the last 2 years because of the recession. No building was going on. Now there's reports where home builders can't find enough workers. And they could be building a lot more homes, but they just don't have the workers to do it.
Because they moved.
They moved, and I don't think they're not really so confident in the economy yet that they're willing to pick up and come back.
Right.
Once they get a firmer sense that this is going to hold, that the economy is really going to turn around, then I think they'll come back. But until then, wherever they are, they're not willing to move to Florida just yet. We
had a sit-down meeting, and you and I and some other members with the EDC and some chambers that were pitching a Made in Brevard campaign. What is that?
Well, the EDC is working with the chambers of commerce, and what they want to do is spotlight some of the products and services that are unique to Brevard. And they're not really trying to push it on to the rest of the country, come buy a widget that's made here in Brevard County. What they're trying to do is just get it out through Central Florida. And hopefully some of those businesses will do businesses with companies that make things here in Brevard County.
So if you need prototyping done, you need raw materials done,
Harris or Breyer might call this person and say, hey, you can do this for us.
And you can keep it right here in the Space Coast.
Right now, they might be going somewhere outside Brevard County to get this work done. And what this program does is try to emphasize, the companies that can do this locally.
Any big additions or subtractions to the local economy? I know Bass Pro Shop, I think, opened up.
And they're going to have a job fair coming up, and those have been extremely popular in Florida. And not only the shops, but the jobs fairs. I mean, they might have 200 jobs, but they're getting 3,000, 4,000 people applying. It's just a fun place to work. But, people also need the jobs also.
And that's in Palm Bay.
It's in Palm Bay, right off 95. Right off 95. It used to be a car dealership, and it's good that piece of property is finding some good use because it did just stick out there, and who knows how long. You don't find companies move into these places, these big boxes, that often. So the fact that they could fill it up is great news for Palm Bay.
And it sounds like there's still activity going on around Melbourne Airport, new design, engineering. some additions coming soon.
Without anything specific, I talked to the people at the airport last week, and they said it's probably been one of the busiest times as far as people looking to expand there or locate there, probably in the last 3 or 4 years. It's their core segment of aviation business, which would be the Northrop Grumman, which would be the Embraers, is really starting to take hold. And there's a lot of smaller companies that want to be near those, to be suppliers, do engineering work for them.
So it's almost like, you know, as much as it is a passenger airport, there's just a kind of an aviation technology and manufacturing.
Right. I think some people argue it's more of a business airport than it is a customer airport.
Well, there's never any waits. You have to get there in some place in a hurry. Let's talk about something else that's been in the news quite a bit, and that is a company that was in some trouble with the clerk of court's office. Right. Blue Ware was a contractor from Michigan that moved here with the help of the Economic Development Commission. And then I guess they were ensnared in a bribery scandal or alleged bribery scandal with the former clerk of court's office. Who is this company and where did they come from?
Well, as far as I could tell, you know, they were a highly reputable company in Michigan. You know, they were involved in scanning and digitizing medical documents. Seemed like a perfect fit here in Florida. The healthcare segment is really growing in Central Florida and throughout Florida because of our demographics.
And you would think that with all of the new IT stuff coming down with digital records for healthcare reform, there'd be the motherlode of business down here in Florida where the health industry is.
And I think that's
what
I think everybody jumped on that, from the governor's office to the local officials. It's all the same thing what you just said, and it's what I thought. Apparently their books weren't as healthy as some people were probably led to believe. We had a reporter, Rick Neal, who just got some documents from City Hall that show that they were in the red before they came here. So they really needed some business once they got here. And, you know, bingo, they found some work with Brevard County Clerk of Court's office. And that's what's led to, you know, fraudulent charges against people in the company and the former county clerk of courts.
What was the deal with the contracting there? I mean, the allegations are that what?
The allegations are that it was a quid pro quo. We get this contract and we'll give you some money for your upcoming campaign. It was, to me, it's very simple as that. And you know, without this contract, this company probably couldn't have survived. And
it was almost like they were recapitalizing using taxpayer or court money.
It's angered a lot of people because that's your money, that's my money.
Right.
You know, so we'll have to let the courts probably sort that one out. But very interesting topic that's going around Brevard County right now, and a lot of interest in it.
Well, so one of the things I know has come up a bit, and I'm sure you've probably heard it, is what did the EDC know and when did they know it? Have they let on that there were any problems that they knew about? Or
I will take the EDC at their word. They look into it as much as they can. But it's always, no matter what, unless it's a Northrop Grumman or some big company like that, it's always a little bit roll of the dice. But the EDC is not in charge of taxpayers' money. I mean, they just say, here are the breaks that are available to you, and if you meet the criteria, you'll get these breaks. If you don't meet the criteria, you don't get these breaks.
So it's really up to the cities and the county to approve the tax breaks.
Correct.
And it's not the EDC's job to necessarily prosecute companies that are coming in that they're trying to sell on Brevard as well.
Right.
Well, that's a delicate balance.
And and I know the EDC has looked at some companies and said, we just don't really think this is right, or we think your business plan is probably not right for Brevard County, and they have pulled back and recommended, you know, that no incentives go to these companies.
It seems like there's a lot of credibility on the line. You know, I mean,
absolutely.
The EDC's credibility is on the line when it comes to the city councils and county commissioners, and also there are lots of other local businesses that when they, you know, when we do give them incentives, we're basically saying, hey, here's a reputable company, or we trust them. Go ahead, be a supplier, be a lender, be an employee of this company.
And if it did involve taxpayer money, you know, I don't think many of us really care, but the EDC gets, you know, like $1.4 million of their budget comes from from Brevard County
Right.
taxpayers. And so I guess, you know, many people feel they should have a say in how that operates and what at least be familiar with what their system is for looking at these companies.
Good point. So is Blue Ware still around?
Blue Ware's still around. I'm not sure what work they're doing now. They have a skeleton staff there, and we've had a couple reporters go there and sit down and talk with some of the workers. A lot of them are disillusioned. A lot of them have left. They hadn't been paid for weeks, and they were just informed recently they got a pay decrease to minimum wage for whatever
Wow.
they were making before.
Retroactively.
Retroactively,
That's
right,
tough.
right.
There's another company, I know that we still are learning about this company,
Right.
but another one is a startup. What's the company?
You know,
Sun Energy, or?
Sun Energy, I think is how you pronounce it. And this is another one. I'm not sure exactly how it works. I don't think they're by any means profitable yet.
They're burning cash at the front end. They're a startup.
And you know, this is where it gets to be a little bit roll of the dice. I mean, this could be the next biggest thing right here in Brevard County,
right.
or it could flop. And you know, if it's the next big thing, I think everyone's going to take credit for it. If it flops, then it's probably going to go back to the people that have started working with this company, mainly the EDC, in the very beginning.
I'm struck that we're having the debate about that company out in the open, whereas with so many other projects that the EDC does, they give them a code name, and we don't know anything about the company
Right.
until it's all approved and they're having a ribbon cutting ceremony just about.
And I think that's probably, this might lead to some changes, just because there is a lot of questions out there and maybe some anger about, you know, how this process is always done in the dark. And I think there's going to be calls for changing, at least adding a little more sunshine to this, so we know more about up front, you know, how this works,
Right.
and who the companies are, and
I've
what,
always
and what
felt
the
like
reputations are.
I've always felt like I know secrecy is the coin of the realm to these folks, and I think managing the secrecy is one of the skill sets they have.
Right.
Nobody wants to upset employees, you know, back in their home business, you know, but if this was done out in the open, it would be more like an auction. People would be more willing to trade information, see what else other people were bidding. You might get a better value for the taxpayers when it comes to offering breaks and incentives to some of these companies.
Sure.
One of the other issues that I know you've written about a little bit lately is Club 52, or the Melbourne Greyhound Park. They are trying to decouple the dog racing from the gambling. What's up
the
with
operators
that?
at Club 52, what they really want to do is bring slot machines to Brevard County.
Right.
Basically have a casino. And they made no secret about that. And the general manager there, Pat Biddix, he's led statewide campaigns to let some of these dog tracks bring in slot machines. And in this particular case, decoupling, there's state regulations where so much of your revenue has to come from pari-mutuel wagering. And in Brevard County's case, that's live dog races. And what's interesting is that the people that do Greyhound rescue, they don't want the dog races. Pat Biddix doesn't want the dog races.
Nobody wants Greyhound racing anymore.
And they formed this nice alliance to try to get rid of it, to get rid of this decoupling where you don't have to have this. And you know, they just had a state report that came out, I think it was in July, that pari-mutuel wagering dropped a considerable amount this year in Florida. In Brevard, or Melbourne Greyhound Park, had a 30% drop in revenues. That was the highest in the state.
On the dog racing
on the pari-mutuel wagering. And no one was upset about that report. They just say that proves their point. We're wasting a lot of time and resources on a sport that no one really watches.
And the poor dogs are still out there running around in the heat.
Correct.
Chasing that
right.
mechanical rabbit, and nobody's there to watch them.
And there's food bills and there's vet bills that go along with this, and people just like to see it go away.
Well, that would be a passing of a Florida icon, even if it's not so much a pastime anymore.
And they hope the state legislature will get rid of this decoupling this year, and then soon after, you know, make some movement towards the casino or the slot machines.
Well, I know that the legislature is in the process of right now of rewriting all of the gambling rules for the state of Florida, and that has put a sort of a major expansion or project at the Melbourne Greyhound Park or Club 52 on hold for
Right,
now.
right.
What is that project, as you understand it?
He wants to build a pretty, this is Pat Beddix and some of his investors, they want to build a pretty substantial multi-level casino with restaurants, with live entertainment, and slot machines. And they claim that will really boost tax revenues in Brevard County, provide a lot of jobs. And the counter argument with that, the people that don't want casinos in Florida, and there's some pretty heavy hitters. It's the Florida Restaurant Lodging Association. It's the theme parks. They do not want to see Florida turn into another Nevada.
Right.
But if you're going to allow it in certain sections of Florida, mainly South Florida, it's kind of hard to see how you can stop it to the rest of the state.
That's a weird policy that you would
Right,
have
right.
major casino gambling in Miami, but not
And if you're going to open
Daytona
it up,
Beach or
I think
Melbourne
the
or-
Seminole Indians now have a compact with the state that they're the exclusive places where you can have these casinos on Indian lands. They say if you're going to open this up, we want to be the major player in this. So there's a lot of conflicting forces at work here.
Well, are we far enough from Orlando that they might leave us alone if the legislature says that a place that had a referendum like Brevard County had can go ahead with their plans?
I don't think we are far enough away from Orlando. I think the reach of the theme parks is pretty big throughout Florida, and they have a lot to say, as does the Florida Restaurant Lodging Association.
Did Pat Biddix at the park, you talked to him about the decoupling. Did he mention anything about concerns that it might not come through for him?
No, he's a pretty confident guy. He thinks it's going to happen. He doesn't think it's going to happen next year, but I think he sees it in the next 5 years. He's very confident it's going to happen.
Well, it sounds like we're going to have something big there that could transform that area out in the O'Galley, Sarno Road, Wickham Road.
Correct, yeah.
Wickham Road area, and could be a big draw. Now, there is one thing that I wanted to talk about that you wrote about in your column this past weekend. You asked readers, I guess online or on Facebook, what are the big business eyesores in Brevard that...
Yeah, just real quick, how this came about was there was a what's called a kit home from the 1920s that was in Melbourne, and they just quickly tore it down. And I don't know much about kit homes, and maybe there's some historical value to it, and there's probably a valid argument to that. But in Melbourne, where this house was located, it had turned into an eyesore, and a lot of vandals had had gone in there and trashed the place. So it got torn down pretty quickly without a whole lot of say. And as part of that discussion, people were looking at other structures throughout Brevard they would like to see taken down. They wish they could tear these down so quickly. And so we took a drive from north to south on the county, taking a look at some of these structures. And for the most part, what we found was that there was not a whole, for the big structures people want to see torn down, there's not a whole lot of historic preservationists out there that want to keep these buildings open. And
right.
Number one was the Miracle City Mall, which...
In Titusville.
In Titusville. And I think most Titusville people want to see that torn down. The lawmakers want to see it torn down. The residents want to see it torn down. It sits mostly vacant. And
so where does that stand now?
Well, there's a developer out of Tennessee who's looking at it. He has a plan, but what he doesn't have is the retailers yet.
I see. So they're working on that.
And some people doubt it's going to happen, but the fact that they're even progressing that far moving forward to tear it down, that's probably good in some people's view.
So Miracle City Mall, the place that used to have the lone sort of hot dog vendor and I think a Sears or something?
It was a JCPenney.
A JCPenney.
And once that closed, that pretty much put an end to that structure.
And what was one of the others on your list?
We looked at Rockledge Mall, which is on US 1.
Rockledge Mall.
And they used to be home to a Sears many, many years ago, back in the 1980s, and that Sears left, and it's set mostly vacant also.
Now that's one that when you drive past it and you look at it, it's so different from what we would consider to be a mall today.
Correct.
That you wonder what could go in there.
What I've heard was it's not in the greatest condition. There has to be a lot of work that goes into it, and that's one of the questions I asked some developers and also some city officials. It's just never that easy to go tear something down.
Right.
You have to look at, hey, who owns the land? Are they paying the taxes on it? If they're paying the taxes on it, there's not a whole lot of motivation to go tear it down. I mean, they would love to
if
see
they
it
have
filled.
tenants and they're making some money, that's better than
You know, if the city could foreclose on it, then that might be better. Then they probably would have some say in tearing it down. And then you see the same thing in Cocoa Beach. There's a glass bank building there.
right.
And it's the same thing. There might have been some history to it at one time, but it serves no function now.
Well, it looked like it could have been sort of space age looking.
And
right?
I think that's when
mean,
it was built,
kinda
right around
has
the
that-
1960s.
Yeah.
That's when it was built. And it had that cool feel to it, right across from the ocean, glass and steel, and it was the right
now
stuff.
It's a piece of junk.
Right. And there's a big fence around it.
I can't imagine anything tougher than trying to rebuild a building with a lot of curved glass.
Yeah. And the mayor is a big booster for Cocoa Beach, but even he said, yeah, it's sad, but I'm willing to, ready for it to go. Right.
Get it out of
Right,
here.
right.
So I think that they just struck a deal or something with the remaining. There was a guy that lived up in the penthouse or something like that that held things up for a while.
There's still some action to be worked out in the courts as far as getting it condemned and getting it torn down. But they've taken an initial step with the city actually saying, okay, we will tear this down at some point, but it's still working its way through the courts. And
All right, what about in the south part of the county? So,
there's not a whole lot there, and I talked to somebody about that, and they said, the southern part of Brevard County is relatively new. You're not going to find a whole lot of big structures there.
except for the old bowling alley.
Well, there's the bowling alley in Palm Bay, and well, that's been $100,000 in fines, for that piece of property. And I think if there's ever a housing turnaround in the Palm Bay area, I think someone's going to purchase that and tear it down and put something else in. It's in a fairly desirable spot as far as a lot of traffic. There's a lot of uses. And we started this conversation talking about the Kid House in Melbourne. If you go down to downtown Melbourne, they have some individuals there that are really concerned about historic preservations, and they're spending an awful lot of money doing an awful lot of work rehabbing some of the downtown Melbourne structures, and it's really looking nice, and it's really paying off. So if you get a chance to go down there, I'd recommend
some of
you do
the
that.
old business buildings right off of New Haven and Strawbridge in there, they are really doing a nice.
Ton of them. There's just a couple developers that have a lot of pride in Brevard County and Melbourne, and they're expending a lot of resources really building that up.
Yeah, I'm thinking that in Melbourne, the only places that I think of as being kind of eyesores are a couple of old boat repair
that's right
properties
along
on
US
US 1 along the way. And you could just, I know we were both here back during the housing boom.
Right.
Seemed like all of those were going to be condos at some point or
Right.
another. I can't imagine them all being condos in the future.
No, I mean, if you're a restaurant and you're near the water, that's gold. If you can open someplace up and overlook the water, they always say that. There's those kind of uses. Unfortunately, I see the same thing you see when I drive down there. I see a lot of tire repair places and things like that. That just doesn't go with the river.
But they're hanging in there.
Yeah,
they're making money, I guess, and as long as they've
or at least paying their taxes. I mean,
they're paying their taxes. Well, so what else is the business department working on this week? Issues that you're looking at? Or?
Well, one of the things, just to go back, we were talking about housing. I think one of the big stories that no one's really touched on yet is the rental market is very strong in Brevard County.
Really?
Rents are up. We just did a story a couple weeks ago. Rents are up like 8% over the year. Occupancy is 94%, and usually 92% is considered good. We're at 94%.
Wow.
And what this is, it's still a lot of the hangover from the housing market that people still are renting instead of buying. So a lot of these first-time home buyers that want to go out and maybe buy their first home, they're still having a hard time getting the financing through the banks.
So there's still tight credit for the people that want to buy.
And that's really making for a strong rental market. So the people that are paying cash for homes, a lot of investors, a lot of people just paying cash, that's what's fueling the housing market as far as single-family home sales of existing homes.
The people that are coming in and buying properties specifically to make them available to rent.
But the people that can't move out, they're keeping the rental market very strong, which is good. So,
I always wonder what happens to all those people that filed or that went through foreclosure.
They're renting
I can't imagine that they are.
No, they're renting, and they have a hard time getting loans, you can imagine, because they have a tricky credit history.
Right. And if you're moving to Florida in search of work, it could be because you didn't have one work someplace else, and you're trying to get in here.
And then one of the other stories we're working on, obviously, the Affordable Care Act goes into effect in October. So
That's
we're extensively doing that, and how it's going to affect small business operators, medium-sized business operators, and individuals.
I think we're seeing some news stories out about more companies that are looking at taking employees to part-time so they don't have to do health benefits for them. I imagine that's got to be easier and harder on people in a service-oriented economy with a lot of waiters.
So a lot of people like losing a lot of hours probably. Means they'll have to go out and probably get another job somewhere. And I don't know if you saw the story over just recently that IBM and now Time Warner, on their retirees, they used to pay for their pension people, they used to pay for the health benefits. Well, now they're moving those people into exchanges, and they're not paying for the health program anymore. And I spoke with Harris just this morning to see if they had any plans to do something similar with their retirees, and they said no, they're not going to do that. But I think you're going to see a lot more companies following IBM's lead and moving some of those people into the health exchanges.
If they're eligible for Medicare, but they're not yet retired, they can be...
Yeah, a lot of questions out there. It's,
wow.
It's exciting and scary at the same time.
There could be more patients, more money, more coverage for people for our healthcare industry here, but then there's the other half of the equation, or more of the equation, where who's going to have coverage and how much is it going to cost, and and all of that. Wayne, thanks for joining us here.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Well, that's it for this week's edition of The Matt Reed Show. You can send me your comments on anything you saw today or read in Florida Today to letters@floridatoday.com. I'm Matt Reed. We'll see you right here next week.